All right, this video is going to start to break out parent-child relationships between our service member that's captured in the contacts table and related contacts. I'm going to leverage the kind of information that we've captured here on family data as our starting point. So it's important to note what kind of information are we trying to capture in this related contacts table. It would be spouses, children, dependents, and then potentially there might be other individuals that are related to the service member in our main table. How would we get after it and store that information? So from our contact list, we'd open up a specific record looking at a specific individual, and we need to create a little tab here that allows us to store and capture additional information. So to do that, do a couple of things here. First thing we'll do is open up contact details in Design View. And we have the detail section with this form control that was created by Access, or tab control that was created by Access as part of their defaults. They took this object that's at the top, they drug it onto the page, and here it is. So we'll take a look at this object. It's got a name of general, that's the caption. And if we right click on the tab, you can insert a page. That puts the name object at the top. We'll leave that alone. We'll call this related contacts. And that then puts it at first page index is at 0, related contacts is at page 1. We're noticing that this edit picture button is not behaving correctly. I'm just going to move it down to the bottom of the form for right now, but we'll need to improve that later. So now we've got a spot to store our family members and related contacts. Next thing is to create a table that allows us to have these related contacts. One approach might be to store all people in the contacts table and then relate people to people. I'm going to choose to do it a different way and create a table that is holding the related contacts. So I'll create a ID field that will become our primary key. And to save myself a little bit of time, I'll open up the contacts table and I'll grab some fields that I think are relevant to the effort that we're going through. So last name, first name, email address. It would look like I probably need to have phone number. Maybe it's home and mobile. And then looks like I need to store information about where the individual is at. That maybe some notes to capture about the individual. Now, in addition to that, looks like we also would like to trap the date of birth. So that would be a date field. And then we can calculate the age based on this date and then the current date. Looks like we also need to include the middle initial. And so that should be enough. And then on a different page, we are capturing on the contacts page, we're trapping whether or not the FRG can contact this individual as a yes, no. Or these individuals that are related to this this service member. So we'll save this table, call it related contacts. And best practice is no spaces. So if you want to visualize a space, put an underscore or leave it blank and click OK. This will identify that we might want to have a primary key. So I'm going to say yes. That puts the icon of the primary key on that table, on that object right there. And we will save. And the next piece that I would also like to do is trap the contact ID, which will be a number field. And this will be the contact ID from the service member. And we'll get that value populated as we build the record. Next piece that I'm going to want to do is I want to trap the, call it the relationship type. And probably another best practice would be to create a table, the ID field, and call it relationship type. Reference table. And let's view that table. So different relationships, we've got spouse, we've got child dependent. We've got maybe adult dependent. As options, you could go son, daughter, niece, nephew, whatever. So now that we've got the relationship type, and we're going to trap a number here, which is the ID field, and then show the relationship type value, which would be spouse or child dependent. Come back over here, go to our lookup wizard, look up from a different table, reach into reference type, relationship type, bring over all the values, click next. We don't need to, we can choose to sort it however we want to sort it. And then we've got our different relationship types. We're hiding the primary key. That's the value that'll get stored, but what will be displayed will be the spelled out value. And click finish. And can't save it because I was in it. So now if I scroll right and I go to the relationship, I've got the values that are being captured there. Date of birth field is available to me, and it uses a date picker that allows us to pick the date of day, month, and year and store that value. If we wanted to have a different format on our dates, those are available to us in terms of however you want to express those. And there are other options for you. So we'll save that. And now we've got a table that can store the related contacts to the service member, capturing where they live, contact information, date of birth, and their relationship to the service member. The next piece is going to be creating a form that allows us to display this information. So I'm going to close the related contacts form and the contacts form. And we need to create a form. So I'll use a couple different options here. We'll start off with one approach, which is to use the wizard. You can set it up to be display in different ways. Because we are thinking about collecting one individual at a time, might use the the justified view or maybe the columnar view. And then we can modify that design. And this gets built for us. Then take a look at it in terms of modifying how certain fields are set up in terms of their widths and dimensional information. And we can save it. Take a look at it. This is what one record would look like with last name, first name, and middle initial. So the next piece of requirements, now that we have a form to capture one person at a time and get their information into the database, is now to take the related contacts form that we've built and bring it onto the tab control. So as you're operating on this person's record, you can then add additional context to these to the service member over time. So we've created a relationship between, or we've created a table to store the values. So then the question is, what's the relationship between the master, which would be the ID field in the contacts, and the child field, which would be the contact ID field that we just brought over. And so this is now going to show a related contact for each record in the contacts extended using the ID field. And if I did it right, we're on our first person. Let's just call him John Smith. And he's got his contact. He is number one in the database, and he's married to Smith Jessica. They have, and their relationship type is spouse. And then Smith Johnny, and that is a child dependent. Goes out of this John Smith. Looks like we've got a problem with our close record, so we'll have to figure out what that is. But now that we're back here, I can go to John Smith. I can see related contacts. There's Jessica and Johnny. And if I go to this guy right here of Daniel Jones, and open them up, I can see that the contact ID is blank, and I can give them Jones, Amanda, and goes out of that record. So there's him with her. This is John Smith with 2 related contacts. Based off of setting the date on the date picker, now choose today's date or type in whatever the date of birth needs to be for that individual. And I'm going to stop the video for time purposes and continue on a future video.